At 12:17 a.m., my door slid open without a sound. No alarms, no forced entry, just an alien woman with long ears, fair skin, and steady eyes looking straight at me as she said, "Human, I need you to clean me." That was the moment I realized my ordinary life was officially over. The first thing I noticed was that my ceiling had decided to hum in C-sharp again. It always did that when the orbital traffic lanes were crowded, as if passing freighters were dragging invisible bows across the bones of the building. I lay on my narrow bed, staring up at the faint hairline crack that split the plaster from one corner to the ventilation grid, and wondered whether gravity would flicker tonight or wait until I was in the shower. The Intercultural Housing Authority brochure had promised stable environmental conditions. It had not specified for which species. My wall display blinked 0:17 in a tired blue. Midnight, give or take the usual bureaucratic lie about time zones. I had just convinced myself that I would sleep when the door slid open with the soft, apologetic hiss of something that knew it was misbehaving. I did not move at first. My brain presented several possibilities in polite order: maintenance drone, confused courier, assassination attempt by someone who hated my complaint letters. I reached for the nearest object of strategic value, which happened to be a metal cooking pan still faintly perfumed with garlic. The corridor light stretched into the room, and she stepped through it. At first glance, she could have been human. Fair skin catching the pale strip of illumination, long blonde hair falling in a straight, unadorned line over the dark collar of her uniform. Then she turned her head slightly, and her ears, long, elegant, tapering past any terrestrial blueprint, tilted forward as if listening not just to sound but to intention. She closed the door behind her. "Human," she said, her voice steady and low, threaded with the faint metallic shimmer of her translation implant. "I require your assistance." I raised the pan higher. "You and everyone else. Is this about the parking dispute?" Because I maintain that hovering diagonally is a crime in at least 3 systems. Her eyes, clear, pale, reflective in a way that suggested she saw more spectrum than I did, settled on the pan. "Your weapon appears insufficient." "It's a multi-purpose utensil," I said, "very intimidating at breakfast." She did not smile, but something in her expression shifted, a minute tremor at the corner of her mouth. Exhaustion, maybe, or restraint. Up close, I could see faint discolorations along the sleeve of her suit, irregular patches that pulsed once and faded, as if whatever had stained the fabric was deciding whether to remain dramatic. "Human," she repeated, softer now. "I need you to clean me." Of all the phrases I had rehearsed for a surprise midnight encounter with an extraterrestrial diplomat, that had not been on the list. I lowered the pan a few centimeters, enough to prove I was listening, but not enough to concede total vulnerability. "I'm sorry," I said carefully. "You need me to what?" "To perform the initial purification sequence." She stood straighter, though I could see the effort in it. "I have returned from a Class 7 exposure environment. My species, protocols forbid solitary cleansing under these conditions." "Of course they do," I muttered. "Why would anything be simple?" She ignored that. "The bioreactive particulates have been neutralized to a non-lethal state. You are not in immediate danger." "Immediate," I echoed. "That's comforting." Her long ears twitched faintly. I had learned, over months of strained cooperation meetings and accidental debates about starship fuel efficiency, that this was roughly equivalent to a sigh. "I would not endanger you intentionally," she said. "That's the most romantic thing anyone said to me all year." Her gaze sharpened. "This is not a mating proposition." "Good," I said quickly, "because I would need to shower first." Silence stretched between us, thin but not hostile. She looked different without the polished composure she wore during negotiations, less like a carved statue from some luminous alien cathedral, more like someone who had just survived something that had pressed too close. "Why me?" I asked, finally lowering the pan completely. "You have an embassy full of highly trained, very clean people." Her eyes flickered not away but inward. The ritual requires trust. That's vague enough to terrify me. You once remained in a room with me for 3 consecutive hours while I explained our stellar cartography indexing system. I was unconscious for part of that. You did not leave. That's because the door sealed automatically. And when it reopened, she continued evenly, you remained. I opened my mouth to argue and then closed it. She was correct. I had remained, partly out of stubbornness, partly because beneath her clinical explanations there had been flashes of dry observation that caught me off guard. The day she described a rival species as evolutionarily ambitious but aesthetically regrettable. I had laughed so hard I'd nearly offended 2 delegations. You consider that trust? I asked. I consider it persistence. A faint pause and patience. The apartment's lights flickered once, as if the building itself were invested in the outcome. What exactly does this purification involve? I said. She reached up and disengaged the clasp at her collar. The fabric loosened slightly, revealing a faint lattice of luminous lines tracing beneath her skin, like distant constellations mapped across a living sky. It is procedural, she said. There will be guided instructions. That's never reassuring. She extended her wrist. A small hollow interface blossomed into the air between us, projecting layered diagrams, biological schematics of her physiology rotating slowly, annotated in symbols my translator struggled to domesticate. Sequence 1, she said. Surface decontamination with calibrated thermal variance. I stared at the projection. That looks like a cross between a spa treatment and a reactor startup. The comparison is inaccurate. Which part? She hesitated. Both. Despite the gravity of the situation, a laugh threatened to surface. I swallowed it down and gestured toward the narrow washroom off the main room. My facilities are modest. The shower sometimes sings. Ignore it. She inclined her head, a gesture that in her culture signified acknowledgement rather than submission. I stepped aside to let her pass, acutely aware of the strangeness of the moment. An alien officer, fair-skinned and golden-haired, ears long and sensitive to frequencies I would never hear, walking through my cramped apartment at midnight because her civilization insisted vulnerability must be witnessed. In the washroom, she paused, bracing one hand against the wall. Up close, I saw the tremor she had concealed. The faint pulsing stains on her suit were spreading in thin, branching lines. You are certain the particulates are neutralized? I asked. Yes. You didn't say immediate that time. A ghost of something like amusement crossed her face. They are neutralized. Good, I said, because my health insurance does not cover interstellar fungi. She looked at me then directly, and for a second the humor thinned. The mission required entry into a spore field surrounding a collapsed outpost, she said. We detected residual life signs. My superior officer ordered withdrawal. And you didn't. I hesitated. The word lingered. In the sterile language of her people, hesitation bordered on heresy. You went back in, I guessed. Yes. And we recovered 2 survivors. Her jaw tightened slightly. We also triggered a secondary dispersal, which led to Class 7 exposure. Yes. I leaned against the doorframe. Sounds to me like you saved lives. I deviated from command efficiency. On Earth, I said, we call that having a conscience. It's messy, very off-protocol. Her ears angled toward me again. Conscience, she repeated, tasting the word. Comes standard with most of us, I said, though results may vary. The hollow interface shifted, impatient with our conversation. Sequence 1, it insisted in a neutral tone. Right, I said, straightening. Procedural, no mating propositions. Correct. I adjusted the shower's temperature controls, praying the building would cooperate. The pipes groaned like ancient beasts disturbed from sleep, then surrendered a steady stream of water. The faint blue status light on her wrist flickered green. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the fine texture of her skin, the subtle luminescent veins beneath. For someone who looked so composed in public chambers, she seemed suddenly uncertain. "In my culture," she said quietly, "this act establishes a bond of witnessed vulnerability." "That sounds serious." "It is. And after tonight, there will be acknowledgement." "Is that good acknowledgement, or the kind that ends with me being audited?" "I do not know," she admitted. I laughed softly. "Well, that's new. The fearless envoy of the Arcany admitting uncertainty in my bathroom." She tilted her head. "Your humor increases when you are anxious. Observation is a dangerous hobby. And you," she added, "continue speaking when you are afraid." "That's called coping." A faint curve finally touched her mouth. It transformed her face, not into something less alien but into something warmer. The tension in the small room shifted, no longer sharp but electric. "Very well, human," she said. "Let us begin." I reached for the calibration control, heart thudding harder than I would have preferred. Outside, somewhere above the city, starships traced silent arcs across the night. Inside, in a building that hummed in C-sharp and smelled faintly of garlic, an alien who had defied orders stood before me, trusting me with a ritual her people reserved for those who mattered. "Just so we're clear," I said, adjusting the thermal variance to match the holographic guidance. "If this accidentally proposes marriage to your left shoulder again, I'm blaming the translator." "For your sake," she replied, stepping into the rising steam. "I hope your appliance is more precise than your diplomacy." And despite everything, the spores, the politics, the fragile line between worlds, I found myself smiling as the first phase of purification began. Steam clung to the ceiling long after the hollow interface declared the first phase complete. The shower had stopped singing and settled into a low, dignified hiss, as if proud of its unexpected participation in interstellar diplomacy. I stood there holding the calibration wand like someone who had just disarmed a bomb using a kitchen utensil. "Sequence 1 stabilized," the interface chimed. "Good," I muttered. "Let's never speak of it again." She stepped out of the stream slowly, water tracing faint luminous lines along her skin before evaporating in soft curls of vapor. The bioluminescent lattice beneath her surface pulsed once, then dimmed to a calmer glow. "Your thermal regulation system is inconsistent," she said, glancing at the showerhead. "That's the nicest way anyone's ever insulted my plumbing. It fluctuated by 0.7 degrees. I fluctuate by more than that emotionally." Her ears angled slightly forward. "That is evident." I handed her a clean towel, trying not to stare at the way the light seemed to settle on her fair skin differently than it did on mine, as if gravity negotiated with her out of politeness. Her long blonde hair clung damply to her shoulders. Without the formal armor of her uniform, she looked younger, not fragile, never that, but stripped of command. The hollow interface blinked again. "Sequence 2, dermal resonance alignment." "Of course," I said. "Why wouldn't that be next?" She extended her wrist toward me again. A new projection unfolded, concentric rings of shifting frequencies, annotated with symbols my translator bravely rendered as harmonic reassurance. "I am to reassure your skin?" I asked, in a calibrated manner. "Right, casual reassurance won't do." She moved past me into the main room, leaving faint droplets on the floor that evaporated before reaching the tiles. I followed, clutching the resonance device like it might bite. She sat on the edge of my narrow couch, posture straight out of habit, though fatigue pulled at her shoulders. The city lights filtered through the window, striping her in pale bands. "You do not need to maintain formality here," I said. "I am not," she replied. "That's worse." Her lips twitched again. It was becoming a pattern, these nearly smiles, like cracks forming in polished stone. I activated the resonance field. A low hum filled the room, deeper than the building's C-sharp ceiling note. The device projected a faint, shimmering arc over her arms. "Move it slowly," she instructed. "Follow the luminescent pathways." I did as told, guiding the field along the subtle glowing lines beneath her skin. Wherever the resonance passed, the light stabilized, smoothing from erratic flickers into steady pulses. It feels, I ventured, acceptable. Acceptable is not a word humans use during spa treatments. This is not a spa treatment. Shame, I was considering a business. Her eyes flicked up to mine. You would commercialize sacred ritual. Absolutely. I'd offer a loyalty program. She made a sound, then short, sharp, unmistakably a laugh. It startled both of us. She covered it quickly, but the echo lingered. You are inappropriate, she said. I prefer entrepreneurial. The resonance field continued its slow path. I became aware of how close we were, how the air between us felt charged, not romantically, not yet, but densely. The kind of closeness forged by shared secrecy. Will your command know? I asked quietly. They will detect the ritual signature, she said. It cannot be hidden. And that's bad. It is complicated. Complicated is worse than bad. She tilted her head. On my world, the initial purification after Class 7 exposure must be witnessed by one deemed integral to the subject's continuity. I paused mid-motion. Integral to your what? Continuity. That sounds permanent. It often is. The hum of the resonance deepened as it reached a cluster of brighter lines along her shoulder. She inhaled sharply. Did I break it? I asked. No, that region absorbed the highest concentration. From the spores? Yes. I adjusted the field carefully, watching the glow steady. You said you hesitated, I said, when they ordered withdrawal. I calculated survival probability for the remaining life signs at 12%. That's not zero. It was inefficient. And you ignored efficiency. I recalibrated priorities. That's a very alien way to say you cared. Her gaze sharpened again, but there was no offense in it. Caring is not discouraged, she said. Attachment is. And this ritual establishes attachment. I exhaled slowly. So by helping you not dissolve into bioreactive chaos, I've accidentally joined a very exclusive club. You have been identified as trusted. By you. Yes. That's enough, I said before I could stop myself. The words hung there, heavier than I intended. She studied me as if I had revealed a new element in the periodic table. You experience isolation, she said. I live in a building that argues with gravity, I replied. Of course I do. That was not what I meant. The resonance device pulsed brighter, signaling completion of the shoulder sequence. I moved to her other arm, slower now. When I first arrived on your world, she continued, I expected hostility. You got paperwork instead. Yes, and you. I'm not sure which is worse. You challenged my assumptions, she said. You contradicted my superiors. You corrected my pronunciation of microwave. You were saying microwave, like it was a small ocean. She considered that. It is not. I smiled despite myself. No. The device chimed softly. Sequence 2 complete. I powered it down. The room felt quieter without the hum. Sequence 3, I asked warily. She hesitated for the first time since arriving. Neural equilibrium check. That sounds invasive. It is brief. She removed a small disc from her wrist console and held it out to me. Place this at the base of my skull. Casual, I murmured. It will measure stress deviations. Define deviation. She gave me a look that suggested I was exhausting but tolerable. I stepped behind her. Up close, I could see the fine strands of her blonde hair, still slightly damp, catching the light. Her long ears angled back slightly as I approached, sensitive to proximity. I pressed the disc gently against the spot she indicated. It adhered with a soft click. A translucent display flickered into existence above her shoulder, streams of data cascading faster than I could interpret. Your neural patterns are lively, I said. I am aware. The line spiked briefly, then smoothed. A color shift rippled across the display from amber to pale green. What does green mean? I asked. Stabilizing. And amber? Agitated. I could have told you that without alien hardware. She was very still now, breathing slow. I became aware of the intimacy of the gesture, my hand close to her neck, the faint warmth of her skin beneath my fingertips. "Do you regret entering the spore field?" I asked quietly. "No." "Even with the reprimand coming?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because the two survivors are alive." "That's it." She opened her eyes. "Is that insufficient?" "No," I said. "It's exactly enough." The display shifted again, deepening to a steady green. The disc detached automatically and floated back into her palm. "Neural equilibrium restored within acceptable parameters," she said. "Congratulations. You are officially acceptable." She stood slowly. The fatigue was still there, but it no longer weighed on her like gravity increased just for her. "It is complete," she said. "That's it." "Yes." I looked around my small apartment, steam fading, light steady for once, the faint scent of ozone and soap lingering. "You realize," I said, "that if your command shows up, I'm telling them this was strictly procedural." "It was." "Good." She stepped closer, not with the rigid precision of an officer but with something looser. "Human. That's my species." "You did not hesitate." I blinked. I absolutely hesitated. "You still assisted." "I complain while helping. It's cultural." Her eyes softened. "It is valued." A faint chime echoed from her wrist console. She glanced down. The light there shifted to a cool blue. "They know," she said, "that you're clean. That the ritual was performed." I rubbed a hand over my face. "Of course they do. Why wouldn't they? They will request a report." "And you'll give them one?" "Yes." "Will you mention the frying pan?" "I will omit the weapon." "Appreciated." Silence settled again, but it felt different now, less charged, more grounded. "You should rest," I said. "You look like someone who wrestled a sentient mushroom and won." "I did not wrestle it." "Missed opportunity." She moved toward the door, then paused. For a moment I thought she might leave without another word. Instead, she turned back. "In our language," she said slowly, "there is a term for one who stands beside another during sanctioned vulnerability." "That sounds long." "It is." Translation. She studied me, as if deciding how much to reveal. "It approximates to chosen witness." I swallowed. "That's a lot." "Yes." "And now I'm that." "Yes." I forced a crooked smile. "Do I get a badge?" "You already possess one." She reached out then, hesitant, almost human in the uncertainty, and placed her hand lightly over the center of my chest, not pressing, just there. "This," she said softly. My heart, traitorous organ that it was, chose that moment to beat noticeably harder. "That's just my circulatory system," I said weakly. "It is sufficient." Her hand withdrew, the door slid open behind her. "Rest," I said again. "You as well, chosen witness. That's going to take some getting used to." "It already has," she replied. And then she stepped into the corridor, the door sealing with its usual apologetic hiss, leaving me alone in an apartment that no longer felt entirely mine. The summons arrived at 03:12, which I took personally. My wall display flickered awake with a sigil I had learned to recognize, the Arkany High Command crest, all elegant lines and unnecessary symmetry. A tone chimed clear, resonant, deeply confident in its own authority. I rolled over and glared at it. "It's not even a reasonable hour on your planet," I muttered. The crest expanded into text. "Officer Elarin Vesk is required to report to orbital platform THAL-7. Ancillary witness designation. Human resident ID 4471K, ancillary," I said aloud. "That's flattering." The door chimed moments later. I didn't bother with the frying pan this time. She stood there in full uniform, pristine now, the faint luminescent lattice beneath her fair skin calm and steady. Her long blonde hair was braided back with precise efficiency. Only her eyes betrayed the tension, clear, focused, carrying the weight of coming judgment. "You received it," she said. "Yes, I appreciate the dramatic timing." "It was not selected for drama." "Of course not." She stepped inside without waiting for invitation this time. That, more than anything, told me something had shifted. The first night she had entered out of necessity. Now she entered as if the threshold no longer required permission. "They will question the legitimacy of the ritual," she said, "and your role in it." I figured as much. Do I need to rehearse? You should answer honestly. That's rarely gone well for me in bureaucratic settings. Her ears angled slightly outward, a gesture I had come to understand as concern. If they determined the bond was formed under emotional deviation. Emotional deviation, I repeated. You make it sound like we committed a crime with feelings. In some interpretations, we did. I sighed and stood, pulling on a jacket. All right, let's go face the poetry-obsessed overlords. They are not obsessed with poetry. I distinctly remember a delegation that communicated exclusively in sarcastic verse. That was the Thrin. See, unstable galaxy. A transport descended to the building's roof, silent and sleek, its surface reflecting the early dawn. The city stretched below in layered light, terrestrial and alien architecture intertwined like uneasy roommates. Inside the craft, gravity shifted gently as we lifted. She stood opposite me, hands clasped behind her back, posture immaculate. "You could still withdraw," she said quietly. "State that you misunderstood the ritual's significance, and let you take the fall alone. It would preserve your autonomy. I prefer shared mistakes." Her gaze softened just a fraction. "You have changed." "Have I?" "When we first met, you prioritized personal inconvenience above collective outcome." "That's harsh." "It is accurate. I considered arguing, then didn't. Maybe I got tired of being ancillary." The corner of her mouth curved faintly. Orbit greeted us with stark brilliance. Platform Thal 7 loomed ahead, a ring of luminous architecture rotating slowly against the black. The docking corridor swallowed us in a wash of white light. Inside, the chamber was vast and austere. 3 Arcany officials waited, taller than her, their ears longer still, adorned with subtle metallic filaments denoting rank. Their skin glowed faintly, as if lit from within by disciplined stars. "Officer Elarin Vesk," intoned the central figure. "You initiated a Class 7 purification with a non-Arcany civilian." "Yes," she replied, voice steady. "You designated him as chosen witness." "Yes." A pause, weighted and deliberate. The central official turned their gaze to me. It felt like being scanned by a morally superior telescope. "Human resident 4471K, they said. "State your understanding of the ritual." I cleared my throat. She required assistance after exposure. I provided it. There was steam, some calibrated resonance, minimal accidental marriage proposals. A faint ripple passed through the officials. Confusion, perhaps. "You comprehend that chosen witness status implies relational continuity," the official said. "I do now." "And do you accept this designation?" I glanced at her. She did not look at me, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Yes," I said. The word echoed more loudly than expected. "On what basis?" another official asked. "On the basis that she saved 2 lives," I replied. "On the basis that your protocols would have left them behind because the math wasn't pretty. And on the basis that when she needed someone to stand there while she was vulnerable, she chose me. I'm not particularly qualified, but I was there." Silence. The central official's luminescence pulsed once. "You speak with emotional bias." "Correct," I said. "It's one of our defining features." A subtle flicker passed between the officials, data exchange, silent communication. "Officer Vesk," the central figure said, "did emotional attachment impair your judgment during the mission?" "No," she answered. "It clarified it. And during the ritual, it strengthened interspecies trust." Another pause. The platform rotated slowly, stars sliding past the chamber's transparent arc. "Your hesitation in the spore field violated direct command," the official said. "Yes. And yet the recovered life forms have since contributed to containment research." "Yes." Your deviation resulted in net strategic gain. She did not respond. The official's gaze shifted back to me. Human, do you intend to leverage chosen witness status for political advantage? I don't even leverage coupons properly, I said. I have no political ambitions. A faint, almost imperceptible change rippled through the chamber. The tension, sharp until now, began to thin. After a long moment, the central official inclined their head. Officer Elarin Vesk, your deviation is formally recorded. However, given the outcome and the strengthening of alliance metrics, no disciplinary action will be enacted. The breath I hadn't realized I was holding escaped. Chosen witness designation is acknowledged, the official continued. It will be monitored. Monitored, I muttered. She shot me a warning look, but there was relief beneath it. We left the chamber without further ceremony. The corridor outside felt brighter somehow. You are not exiled, I said. No. You're also not demoted. No, I consider that a win. She stopped walking and turned to face me fully. The orbiting light framed her, catching in her blonde braid, tracing the elegant lines of her ears. You defended me, she said. You defended yourself. You did not withdraw. I told you shared mistakes. Her gaze searched my face, less analytical now. When I first arrived on your world, she said, I believed your species chaotic, inefficient, excessively emotional. We prefer creatively disorganized. And now, I asked, now I understand that you're emotional. Outside, a transport streaked across the sky, leaving a faint silver trail. Human, she said quietly. Yes. I do not require cleansing tonight. Good, the shower needs a break. But I require continuity. I smiled. That I can manage. The ceiling hummed. The city breathed. Two worlds, still awkward, still learning, but no longer standing at opposite ends of the room. For the first time since she had stepped through my door after midnight, nothing felt precarious. Not because the galaxy had grown safer or because politics had vanished, but because we had chosen, deliberately, imperfectly, to stand in each other's vulnerability.